everyone, and welcome to today's Open Teams community event. Open Teams is the single point of contact and procurement for all your open source solutions, support, and training needs. Visit openteams.com or reach out to us at connect@openteams.com to learn more. As part of Open Teams' overall mission to sustain and support open source, we are also sponsoring the Open Source Architect community with the goal of providing a dedicated space for experts to connect and collaborate over their favorite open source technologies. To learn more or to apply for membership, visit openteams.com/OSA-community. In today's event, maintainers Nathan Swain and Sean Crawley are going to take us on a tour of Tethys Platform, a tool designed to simplify working with and presenting environmental research data and results. Environmental data analysis and presentation are challenging for various reasons, but it's important to do it right because of the impact the environment has on all of us. Environmental data analysis needs to be done efficiently and correctly, and the significant results need to be communicated effectively and clearly. But Tethys Platform is much more than just a dashboard builder. It integrates numerous open source tools, the Django Web Framework, PostGIS, PostgreSQL, Plotly, Bokeh, HTCondor, Dask, and many others to provide environmental researchers with a rich toolbox to build with in the course of their work. Please post any questions you might have in the course of our conversation to the Zoom chat or Q&A. And Nathan, Sean, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Looking forward to this. So why don't we start with the two of you introducing yourselves, your background a bit, and how you got involved with Tethys Platform. Nathan, you want to start?
Sure thing. Yeah, so my name is Nathan Swain. I got involved with Tethys Platform because I was its creator. I created it while I was at Brigham Young University, completing my doctoral degree back in 2015. And now I work for a company called Aquaveo. We develop water modeling software, and I've employed Tethys Platform to develop applications for both our own clients and also in-house commercial products.
Great. Sean?
Yeah, so I'm Sean Crawley, and I also joined Tethys Platform community via Brigham Young University. I was a student there starting my master's at the time Nathan was kind of wrapping up his doctor's work, which was Tethys Platform. So it was being used broadly by faculty, staff, and their students. Partly, yeah. I think that was part of the main reason it was being developed, is so it could help others in the field, right, to do their research. So I jumped in as a master's student, doing my research, leveraging Tethys Platform. And since then, I also worked for Aquaveo with Nathan for about a year before moving on since to other endeavors. But I've continued to use Tethys Platform wherever I've been. I'm currently with Linker.
Excellent. So talk a bit more just about Tethys. Obviously I've introduced it, but provide your own flavor of it. What is it? What is it trying to do? What is it not trying to do? Give us some more detail.
Yeah, sure. And I'll take that one. And you did largely in your introduction touch on a lot of those main points as you alluded to, but really the ultimate goal of Tethys Platform is to lower the barrier of entry for scientists, namely in the earth sciences, to be able to approach web application development with ease, right? With greater ease, because of course most earth scientists aren't proficient in web languages and everything. But Python, has I think become kind of one of the premier languages for scientists and for research. So it made a lot of sense to develop a platform, namely built on Python, that can allow these scientists to come in with tools they're more familiar with already and get their work on the web, get it into a web application to get their work broadcast and in others' hands. So you mentioned as well in the intro that it is more than simply just a dashboard builder. There are two main parts to Tethys Platform. One is a portal, essentially an application portal that handles, user management, and serves as kind of a almost like an iPhone where you have your apps, right? You have all your apps. It's like almost like its own little, iOS in a sense. The second piece, therefore, is the apps themselves, which Tethys platform provides a software development kit, or an SDK, to provide that simplified web application development tool set, which for the most part, again, gives Pythonic access to a suite of other open source tools for scientists. And I won't dive into the details of all those separate tools. We'll probably touch on those later on, but yeah, that's essentially it, that we're trying to get, lower that barrier for scientists to. We don't want to get in the way of their work. We want to get them in where they're already familiar, and be able to boost them into the web.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything specific to add on top of that, Nathan?
Yeah, so you asked, what is it not for? Honestly, Tethys platform is built on the Django web framework, and we don't really do anything to restrict you from falling back to that if that's, if you're more advanced. So you can do quite a lot with it, but it's really, I guess, if I were to say, like Sean has said, it's targeted at these kind of data exploration apps. It's probably not where you want to start, though, if you're prototyping something or coming up with a proof of concept. Tethys is really good for developing more of your production level application.
So there, you'd want to start in a Jupyter notebook or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right.
All right. So the project emerged from your doctoral work, Nathan. Was the idea of something? Did you realize the need and propose the concept to work on, or was it collaborative? Where did the idea come from originally?
I wish I could take credit for it, but I would say it was a collaborative effort. The project originated from NSF funding, a project called CI Water that kicked off in 2012. And really kind of what inspired our piece of it was there was a student who developed a web application. At the time, this was before there was anything like ArcGIS Online, but the professor kind of tasked him with creating an application that could show mod flow models, which is a groundwater model, on the web, and actually provide some sort of a interactivity where he could drop a point representing a well, rerun it, and see how it impacted the model, right? And he kind of stitched this together with what was available at the time. I think he was running actually ArcGIS desktop on a Windows server in the background, but it was wildly successful. And we saw that success and decided it would be good if we could streamline it and simplify it so that making these kinds of interactive applications, more than just data viewers, but actually being able to interact with a model and rerun it and do some scenario exploration, we wanted to see if we could simplify that. And that's kind of where Tethys grew out of.
So it's a bit different than a Dash app or something, in that you can reach more deeply into the underlying model with the interface. Right.
Yeah. So in our SDK, we provide, of course, things to create interfaces similar to a dashboard app. But then behind the scenes, we also have interfaces for Dask and HT Condor, tools for running jobs and managing them. And we provide, well, I guess you have Python and the whole world of Python at your fingertips on the back end.
Okay, excellent. Where did the name came from? I mean, I'm generally aware of the mythological origins of the name Tethys, but what would inspire that choice?
The only real consideration that went into the name was I didn't want it to be an acronym because the engineering field that we come from, my background is in water resources, civil engineering, is just inundated with acronyms. And so I I thought Greek names were cool. There's lots of successful products named after Greek things, right? Or Roman things like Jupiter. So we're looking at a list of things and decided Tethys kind of fit because Tethys is the Titanus of rivers and oceans, and we were studying water at the time, right?
Yeah,
So
that
it
makes
made sense.
Cool. So, what do Tethys has a lot of strengths. And what do you see as the real standout strengths of Tethys compared to pure projects? Competitor projects isn't really the right phrasing for it. Is it
Right.
one of a kind? Are there other tools that can do similar things? Where does it stand in the ecosystem?
Sure. Yeah. So you mentioned Jupiter. I would say Jupiter is used for a lot of similar type activities, though I kind of think of them more as prototyping activities and proof of concept or documenting your work, right? Jupiter is great for that. And there's actually some really great projects built on Jupiter that can get you to a standalone web application. I know there's like HoloViz and Panel and Voila. And a lot of those have kind of been developed since the inception of Tethys. But Tethys, like I said, is built on Django, so it's really a full-fledged web framework. And we give you a lot to help you get started. So if you're, a volcanologist or something, you don't necessarily have to go and learn all of the web technologies to get going.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you can fall back to the roots of Tethys, which is Django, and the underlying web technologies. If you are a more advanced learner or you want to do something more customized than what we provide out of the box. And in that regard, there are some newer things that I saw at PyCon and SciPy, like Reflex, which just recently rebranded from Pinecone, or Solera, that have a lot of promise. And I think, honestly, I want to explore them myself. So, yeah.
Are they things that could be easily wired into Tethys to take advantage of those capabilities?
That's one of the things I want to investigate, because we have this idea of an app scaffold that kind of gets you going. And I recently created an experimental one that is React based, but you have to get to the JavaScript to really use that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where something like Solera, which has it's like a Python wrapper around React, if I understand it correctly.
Okay.
Could be really useful, and we could just plug it in as a different type of app you could develop in Tethys.
Mm-hmm. Just swap the back end, basically.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
but
Sean,
honestly,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, seeing all these projects grow up is just more evidence to me that this is a need, and kind of validates Tethys, right?
Yeah, effective manipulation, analysis, and presentation of data will be an evergreen need. It's a core thing.
Right.
So Sean, as you were in your process that led you to looking into Tethys and eventually adopting it, did you try other tools? Were there things that you tried and struggled with, and then you're like, oh, this is amazing? What was your discovery journey like there?
Yeah, great question. And my journey, I feel like, is fairly unique, but I was, of course, I mentioned going to Brigham Young University, doing my master's, and that master's as well was in civil and environmental engineering. And I was actually, struggling as I was maybe even getting, and this was actually more for my undergrad, I was struggling to know what I wanted to do when I graduated. I'd done some internships, and wasn't loving kind of the work as it seemed in the field. So I was turning more to like, what am I passionate about? And that kind of to me was like, what classes did I love? And there was somewhere we had to do Visual Basic, which is, the coding language behind Excel. That was like my favorite class. So I was like, hey, maybe there's something, to mesh these worlds of programming and do more, computer-based programming and coding with engineering. And I think I lucked out in the sense that BYU is, as far as I understand, is kind of like been on the cusp of this intersection of water science and computer science and data science, right? They have a great program called hydroinformatics, which is just that, right? Kind of pulling the data science, computer science, but behind, you know, water resource engineering issues and problems. So I was able to quickly get connected. That just seemed like, you know, the holy grail to me, or the clear path forward, where I could jump in and still be leveraging the engineering background I'd been developing. And so I kind of, and in that regard, Tethys, I think, was perfect, right? Because I was coming in, as I mentioned, kind of the tail end of Nathan doing his, you know, inventing Tethys platform. So it was now a thing that I could use. Sure, it's grown a lot since then, and you know, but at the time, it made a lot of sense because my only real experience, like I said, was Visual Basic, and so I didn't have a lot of software like really at all. I mean, I'd done a little of HTML even in my further past. I had some cousins that were web developers and taught me HTML. So like even those two pieces together was like, okay. I mean, again, well, I'll mention I did have some Python as well because again with the civil engineering. But yeah, with those three, Tethys was great to jump into, and I think it was. I didn't explore other technologies. I'll say that because again, Tethys was kind of like the whole, you know, this was the big focus for the big excitement, right? In that hydroinformatics lab at the time. But I guess I didn't feel the need to look elsewhere because it's like, yeah, this seems to be working well, and you know, and it really is what kind of paved the way for me to even be, you know, in a way, kind of detach myself, at least like emotionally or mentally, from civil engineering and lean more hardly into the software engineering, right? Because you know, I feel like it is a great tool for that kind of gradual, even transition, like if you want. Nathan kind of spoke to that. Like you can really leverage the Tethys platform SDK, which is very Pythonic, gives you Pythonic wrappers around everything, so you can stick with Python. But if you want to dig back into like the Django, the JavaScript, the HTML, CSS, you can. And I just loved, you know, gradually starting to do that too. So yeah, I have, you know, nothing good to say about Tethys in terms of where it's been able to take me in my, you know, educational and career journey. So
yeah, and it sounds like even coming from a relatively light coding background, and you know, to be fair, my biggest language before Python was Excel VBA, so I love it, and I also feel the pain of it. So yeah,
my story is the same. So VBA is a good entry level language.
I got into Python because I was trying to build something object oriented in VBA, and it was terrible.
Oh so, yeah.
But it sounds like the learning curve from where you came from, Sean, up into Tethys platform was pretty smooth. It was an easy adoption for you.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it definitely helps that you know, my professors and, you know, everyone was gearing me towards that, right? But certainly, yeah, I think I guess I'll say, yeah, I was kind of maybe a golden case, right, for a Tethys user in that sense. But yeah, it was great.
Cool. So both of you are maintainers, obviously Nathan as creator. Who else? How is the project governed? Who are the other maintainers? I know Scott is. We've talked. I met Scott actually at SciPy. How you know? How does contributions work? You know, describe the kind of the meta of the project a bit.
Sure. Yeah. So right now we have a 3-member steering committee, is what we call it, and it's elected. We kind of have offset elections every 3 years. You're testing me on our governance docs. And we do have governance documentation published on our website. But yeah, so it's the 3-member steering committee. And is there a benevolent dictator? I mean, I've been on the committee since its inception, so it's kind of a fuzzy area.
Yeah.
Right now, that makes sense. So, but hopefully in the future, I can hand it off, right?
I mean, you know, there's governance is an interesting evolution that happens as projects grow, and especially the interests of the creator or the early maintainers evolve in other directions. So as long as it's working, as long as there's, you know, not controversy, you're probably doing fine. So
right, exactly. Yeah, and you mentioned, in addition to Sean and myself, Scott Christensen is the other member of our committee. He's also been on the committee since its inception. He was really one of the researchers at BYU that really helped me with the initial development. So we're still pretty much governed by, the original users and developers. But like I said, we're hoping that evolves as the project grows.
Are you actively seeking contributions, pull requests, and the like?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly open to pull requests. We're on GitHub, and we kind of follow the GitHub flow methodology. And we've received a lot of, most of the pull requests are from either us on the steering committee or kind of people who were in the circle of the original development team at BYU. But we have had a few contributions from outside as well. And again, it's something that we want to grow. We want to have more of a diverse community of contributors to Tethys platform so that it gets better refined and, is a better product in the end.
Yeah. So if you're out there doing environmental or water research, give it a try and see what features you wish that it had, and work with the team to make it happen. So
definitely. And I would say we're active on our discussions page. So if you put something on there asking for help or asking how to do something contribution wise, we're more than willing to help.
Awesome. Cool. Well, so let's dig into what you can do with Tethys in a bit more detail. So in thinking about it, I kind of had sort of three categories I think about it from, kind of the down the middle, common, typical, majority use cases. But then I'm also curious, like what are some cool or some unexpected ways that either you could use Tethys or that you've seen people use it. So what is, I guess, starting in the, down the middle, do you have an example of an app? What's a good way to describe what Tethys is and can do?
Sure. Yeah, maybe this is where I can do a screen share and show you some of the applications. So the first one I'll share is this is a portal set up for a group called Tsunami. Just give it a second to pull up. And they're part of a group called Surveyor. It's a NASA group. It's actually a NASA USAID partnership. And they basically set up these hubs at different locations in the world where there's developing countries. And the whole goal is to how they can increase their capacity while leveraging NASA services to provide services like flood warning or weather meteorological warnings, things that we take for granted in the US. And so this is one member of a hub called Amazonia that's in South America. And we've set up this Tethys portal. This one's themed pretty brightly. And kind of the pieces of the portal, of course, it has that homepage you can customize with your own content, but then it has what we call the apps library. And this is like what Sean was talking about. It's kind of similar to your phone in concept, where you have a lot of different applications that are focused on, one aspect of a modeling or data visualization activity. And in this case, in the case of the Tsunami portal, these are helpful for them to use in their, I guess, the water managers managing the water resources of Peru, which is the country that organization belongs to. So let me show you one of these applications. Show you the GeoGlows Hydro Viewer. So this application uses a service called the GeoGlows ECMWF Streamflow service. And it, as you see, basically provides a streamflow forecast out to 14 or 15 days globally, which is a pretty remarkable feat. ECMWF is the European Union's kind of meteorological forecast center, and they've developed a global meteorological model that also has a runoff portion that we can use to do streamflow. So this river reach here that's kind of lit up, you could come in here and select it, and it takes a second to pull the data. So I have one that I pulled out of the oven. right, pre-baked. But it basically will show you the stream flow rate, and it's a probabilistic forecast because the ECMWF model has 50 members. So you can kind of see the probability of where it's going to exceed. And you can also grab historical data. They've run this model in a hindcast back to 1978. So you can get simulated historical results as well. And as I said, this is available anywhere. That service is available anywhere in the globe. So that's where it becomes really useful to the developing world. So that's one application. I'm trying to think. The other one I was going to show, well, I'm not seeing in this portal. So I guess we'll just pick one. We'll roll the dice, right? Through Hydrostat Metadata Explorer. So this is again another kind of data viewer application that really is meant for visualizing netcdf type files. Call it the Metadata Explorer, and it's pulling in several meteorological data sets. So you can kind of see these two applications I've shown you have elements that we see in a lot of Tethys apps that people use. So this is what I would call the common use case, basically a map data viewer. So kind of getting back to your question, this is kind of the typical use case for these types of things.
And it can pull in data of, any type that you have the data set available, lightning strikes, earthquakes.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't have to be water related, although a lot of these are. Right. So if you have, yeah, I can't think of other data sets, lightning strikes, like you said, but.
Yeah, it's more about the data format, right? In this case, netcdfs, of course, standard OGC web service formats as well, WMS, CMS, those anything of those format can of course be pulled in on these web maps, right?
Right. So yeah, a lot of what you're seeing, that kind of the basic look of the apps, you'll notice is similar, and that's where we provide kind of the boilerplate in Tethys apps, so that you don't have to worry about templating or creating, the header, things like that in your website.
And so things like the topographical versus a political map, that is just something that you can just click it in whichever type of overlay you're looking for.
Yeah, so it's done through Python code. That's something to clarify. It's not a WYSIWYG, right? So it's not like a click and edit with your mouse, but yeah, we have an SDK that lets you create the map and add layers to it and process data. And of course, you have Python and all of the SciPy stack at your fingertips to help with that.
Speaking of the SciPy stack, how do you do your package installs and environment management? Is that a Conda, or is it home roll packaging, or what do you do?
Yeah, it's currently a Conda packaging deployment mechanism. So we have it on Conda right now on our own Anaconda package. We're trying to get it on Conda Forge, but having difficulty. So we hope to have it on Conda Forge soon.
Yeah, I've put a couple of things to Conda Forge, and when it goes smoothly, it's fantastic. But debugging it can take some work sometimes.
Right. Yeah, I help maintain a handful of packages, but we are also trying to support the, I don't know what you would call it, the vanilla Python packaging environment as well. So we are trying to support both. We're not quite there with our pip install yet, but we're hoping to get there. Ironically, that's how we started. And now we're trying to go full circle and be able to support both ecosystems.
Yeah, I've not had to wrestle with it myself, but the challenge of the pip and wheelbase system for the GeoStack, as I understand it, is one of the most challenging packaging contexts out there. So
right, yeah, there's a reason Conda is so popular
in scientific. Cool. So I guess, yeah, in case if you have any, what is the kind of the most cool or interesting application you've seen?
Yeah.
Unusual?
So I think the application that Sean developed at his time with NOAA was a pretty interesting application. I don't know if you're ready to share that, Sean.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to demo that. Give me a
Perfect.
second here to just share my screen. Yeah, so this was during my time with what's called the National Water Center. Let me pull out just like, yeah, they have their own, same thing here. You see they have like a portal and apps library. They've, we didn't do much branding in terms of that, right? We kind of have the standard Tethys portal and, copyright 2019, your organization. So this wasn't, again, we didn't focus so much on the branding because this is just used internally. It's not any public facing thing. So I'm actually on their internal VPN right now to demo this. And they only have one application in this case. But again, yeah, you could have a whole suite here. They've put work into developing some additional apps that just haven't made it to kind of the production state yet. But this one, the NWC Operations Dashboard, NWC stands for National Water Center. Of course, the organization I'm referring to, they're essentially they're the nation's water center, right? As it says, the National Water Center. It's the first of its kind. When it comes to hydrologic data and water management, it's mostly managed right on a regional basis. There's different regions across the U.S. that have their federal water management organizations called WFOs, weather forecast offices, or RFCs, river forecast centers. But the National Water Center is the first of its kind to take a step out and have like a global connection point, or sorry, not global, national connection point, right? So the National Water Center acts and operates as almost like a consultant for all these other regional centers. And the National Water Center that also has its own unique national water model that's able to model stream flow at every location, at every stream, big or small, across the entire nation. That's like over 2.8 million stream segments, right? That they're modeling and doing short-term models, long-term models. And so the operations division is the team that is, it's kind of, I always thought of it as like a NASA ground control. Because if you actually go in the building, it's just like an open floor plan with just kind of rows of desks and computers, and they just have a wall of giant screens, and and these are hydrologists and forecasters that are essentially using this dashboard and some other tools to kind of monitor those models and forecasts and the current conditions of these streams around the nation. So with that big introduction, I think that's where the coolness of this app comes in, that it's actually being used in an operational capacity for this flood forecasting, right? And this consulting goes in back, leading, guiding those regional forecasters towards decision making of where they issue flood warnings, right?
Just gonna ask about that. Yeah.
Exactly. So this was developed by myself. I was actually, in this case, the sole developer of this application for them. But it's basically a dashboard builder and viewer. So you can, each forecaster might have each different event that we are trying to monitor might have its key variables and components that we're trying to watch. So this is just a way for them to build out whatever dashboard they need, right? They can add multiple panels, 1 to 6 panels. And then on each panel, you can double click and see active. It'll give you, I need a double click one. There we go. It'll give you your active layers in that panel. And of course, you can turn off certain layers in one panel, right? So it's really a dashboard builder. But we have, of course, it's very, specific to their use case, where we have, here we have like a built-in suite of a library of all these different services, right? Where they're even, fire data, where they can pull on fire data, which of course influences where flooding may be worse, right? Where they've had recent fires, and, just all these different data sets, urban infrastructure, right? So they can be looking at what urban infrastructure is being affected by flooding. So again, they can build out these dashboards exactly how they want, and then once they're built out, they can save them. There's like a saving and loading. So each user has their specific dashboard. So when they're on shift, they can just come right in, load up their dashboards, and be ready to go. Right. So it's really saved tons of time for that operational team, and being effective, and again, just honing right in on what's important to their job. And there's a bunch of other tools that have been developed. We got an error, and this could be, various reasons, but but there's a bunch of other tools here, right, that also help them do their job, where they put out actually official graphics, and that, again, kind of getting towards those like flood warnings and stuff. So right here, they have these different official graphics, like an area hydrologic discussion or a flood hazard outlook. That these are actually graphics that are often even sent and used by the president, and those are built right out of this application. They, once they get kind of the key data they're looking at, they can immediately turn it into an official looking graphic. We'll see how it looks here, but yeah, see, this is just a very like a PDF version. It's pulling in, data from those panels into here, and then they can add key messaging and stuff. And so yeah, it was really awesome to be part of this project, and again, it's currently being used day to day by the National Water Center's Operation Division. So
that's really neat. So like pretty much, if anytime I've seen a water, typically it's been water map like this, more than likely it was created through this dashboard.
I'll say more than likely it wasn't.
Oh.
There's really only these two types of graphics that are currently coming out of the National Water Center that are kind of their official products.
Okay.
Because it's usually, I think you most likely would have seen some of those regional offices that put out their graphics, right? Because usually at the end of the day, we're mostly trying to, again, consult with the regional offices. So, they're kind of, at the front line, so to speak, with their feet on the ground in those areas to really put out the official messaging to that, to those in that region. But these graphics are often what we're passing to them and such, right? So that intel that's getting passed down is a lot of time coming from these. But again, anyone could access these if you know the right place, right? They're broadcast on a website, official website and things as well. But yeah, you're likely not seeing them quite yet per se. But
okay.
Yeah,
it's a standard format that you implemented to the output, implemented to make the output in that format. It looks like. How hard was it to synchronize the view of each of those 6 panel ports?
Yeah, that was tough. See, this is where a lot of this does lean into kind of how I spoke earlier. So I've really tried to lean more into the computer science and dive into the JavaScript, because this is a lot of JavaScript. So in a lot of ways, some of the stuff you're seeing here is stepping away from that core, lower the barrier Tethys SDK. But yeah, I had to do a lot of customization here. But I've since, as a result of this, I definitely have plans in the back of my mind and hopes to bring some of this, because again, this is a common use case, right? Building out dashboards for those using this app, to try and get some of this functionality back into the core SDK, right, and make it easier. But some of that hasn't happened yet, right? We're always juggling, getting the work done, and getting, following our leaders and where the money is pointing us to getting stuff back to the community. And that's a hard line to walk. I'm sure you all are aware of that in the open source community. But
chronic challenge. But everything else, it shows that the ceiling of what you can do if you do peel back the hood and start tinkering around. The ceiling of what you can do with Tethys platform is quite high. So
right. And I would just reiterate that a lot of the examples we've shown you are in kind of the water sciences side of things, but there's not really anything in Tethys that is specifically forcing you down that path. I think anything that has especially a geospatial component, that's why we say earth sciences, is ripe for using in Tethys. And even if it doesn't, we've integrated with libraries like Plotly and Bokeh, and other visualization, data visualization libraries. And honestly, if there's something you think we should have in there, we're open for suggestions, right?
Yeah, one thing I'll add, just in terms of, yeah, the variety of applications that Tethys could be used for, and this plays into the cool usages. This one was kind of the most surprising and probably most unique. We can't demo it, unfortunately, but it's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They're doing almost helicopter modeling with Tethys. So yeah, that's a pretty unique. See, that's completely irrelevant to water and that world in many ways.
But still geospatial relevant. So it hits that point of strength, right?
Right.
Cool. So thinking about future directions, so we've talked a bit in a couple of spots about possible future directions. Does the project have a formal roadmap or a wish list? Or what are the big things that you're working on now, and that or either that you are working on now or that you would like to be working on now, and then kind of longer term, what the vision for the project is?
Sure. Yeah, we don't have a formal roadmap. We kind of track all of our, I guess, our wish list in the GitHub issues page. And we just recently did a fairly big push to get Tethys 4 out, which was mainly driven by the fact that the version of Django we were on was being deprecated in Tethys 3. So that's one driver, is just keeping up, right, with the dependencies. But yeah, what would if I just had like 6 months to do nothing but Tethys platform development? I think there's some areas we definitely could work on. So we've kind of mentioned this theme of lowering the barrier. And one of the challenges that a lot of our users have right now is with deploying a Tethys application, because it is a Django application. It has a database component. Most users are using Postgres. And so it can be a challenge to draw those pieces together. I guess they can have map servers associated with them as well, like a thread server, or a geo server. And so I think we'd really like to do, and we have done, focused a lot recently, streamlined the production deployment of these applications. And that's an active area of research at BYU right now, but we need a lot of that to come back and mature a little to be in the main platform. And like we kind of alluded to earlier, there's some really cool technologies that are coming out. PyScript is one that's
Totally.
Was like the big hit at PyCon this year and last year. There's definite applications of that we could do integrating into Tethys for Python-based front-end apps, right? So we definitely want to go down that route. There's also these other kind of React wrappers or other similar JavaScript wrappers like Solera that would be interesting to integrate. And then there's a concept that we just released with Tethys 4 is called layouts, which really provides a full view for you. And we only have one right now. It's the map layout, and it kind of targets that typical use case I showed you, which is, full screen map to show data. And the map layout went a long way to make that a really simple process, to where you can get a map up with 4 or 5 layers and less than 100 lines of code. So
yeah.
So more things along those lines, I think, would be in line.
Kind of paving the outer edges of the city is like making more areas easier to get to more quickly for newcomers to the project.
Exactly. Yeah.
Definitely. Cool. Anything else about the project, future directions, capabilities? Sean, how about you? Anything in particular that you would be something you'd like to see added or you'd like to work on?
I think streamlining that transition from prototyping technologies to Tethys application would be cool. We talked earlier, that's really where kind of where Tethys can shine more, right? And what we don't expect people to use Tethys for is if they're prototyping, but being able to help pave that way, as you already kind of alluded to like, okay, I have something that I want to, productionize, or I want to make interactive, right? I have a Jupyter notebook that I love to kind of get in someone's hands, but make more professional, interactive. How do I do that? I think that could be really interesting to further bridge that gap, right? And do whatever we can to streamline that. There's already, again, it's already something we're looking into and trying to do. But yeah, that's one area for myself as well. I already mentioned, like, there's already some things that I put a lot of work into, kind of, on the honing in more like on custom JavaScript on the maps, that I think are some that would be have some distant, far reaching leverage, I guess, if we could get some of those back into some of the templates and stuff as well, right? Like I kind of talk about the paneling and stuff.
Mhm.
I think that even stuff like that, just getting that kind of as a out of the box kind of up and running solution would be really valuable. So
Yeah. When it comes to, say somebody has looking back to the that transfer from prototyping to an app, what do you think is the workflow that makes the most sense? Like to have maybe like a Jupyter integrated into Tethys in some fashion, or more like a converter, like an NV convert, but something that would, you'd craft your notebook in a certain way and then run a transformer tool across it, and it would, stick it into instrument up a Tethys app framework around it. Do you have a sense for what would be easier there?
Yeah, so we've looked at, we've looked at both of them. I think for the transition, we're thinking more of the latter, of having a tool that would help you, get you the 90% there of converting your notebook to a Tethys app. But I also see there being value of being able to, host a Jupyter notebook right in a Tethys portal alongside your Tethys apps. As maybe a scratch board or something where you can explore with some of the data you've seen in the apps.
So I can maybe subset the data and port it across into like the working memory of a kernel or something, so that it fits on the machine and it lets you play with it a bit, explore
exactly. Yeah.
Excellent. So we don't have any questions from the audience at the moment, which is all well and good. If you have any in these last few minutes, please feel free to drop them in chat or the Q&A. But barring that, we got a couple of closeout questions. What's something that each of you have learned over the course of your work, from the beginning for you, Nathan, and from your point of contact, Sean? What's something you've learned through working on Tethys that you've really enjoyed, or that you've really found valuable to your work, or to just your either your data science, geoscience work in general, or your developer chops?
Sure. Yeah. I certainly became a lot better developer through my experience with Tethys, but I think the thing that has been most impressive to me is just what people have done with it. And just giving them the tool has produced so many good results. And so I'll give you an example. I had an opportunity to go and give a Tethys training in Kenya right before
Cool.
COVID, like right before COVID. I almost didn't make it home. But we were at this center called the RCMRD. I forget what it is. It's a regional center that supports many of the countries in Eastern Africa, but we also had some attendees from Western Africa. And honestly, they took that and ran with it. I read, I guess, a professor of mine who was working with some folks in West Africa later sent me this article about how they had used that hydroviewer tool that I showed you during a flood event in Malawi, and it actually help them to respond to the event. And
Oh, wow.
they, they said that it reduced the cost of damage and lives and such. And so just things like that I never anticipated would come out of it, or how it's being used by people in over 100 countries has really been rewarding, and definitely one of the highlights of my life.
Fantastic. Yeah, suddenly, oh, hey, this made a real difference. That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah. Sean?
Yeah, as for myself, I've already largely spoken to this, but I think just the Tethys platform for me, it was that instrumental piece to I guess get me into the career that I've been loving, right? Making that transition, like I already mentioned, from civil engineer to kind of more software developer. I'm not saying that's what Tethys is for, right? It's not like it's not like a become a software engineer crash course, but certainly for myself, it's been awesome to do that, right? Because like I said, I was at a point where I was almost wrapping up my undergrad. I'm like, I don't even think I want to do this for my job per se, but being able to find this niche, right? And really, and then in addition to that, just the kind of piggybacking off what Nathan said, just, knowing that the work that I'm doing is largely tying back into trying to save lives, save property, right? In terms of, flood prediction. It is very, I think it more just has a sense of altruism paired with it, which again, I mean, I wouldn't say, that's not part of like Tethys's motto per se, but the fact that we are trying to empower, again, those scientists, those earth scientists, and a lot of that does come back into just making the earth a better place, of course, right? And saving lives and
Sure.
and improving our world. So it's really cool to find myself and where I am now, right? And largely thanks to Tethys platform. So
It's very cool. Some deep impact for both of you. So
yeah.
So we're getting close to the end. We do have one question that came in about Tethys in the Q&A, and Lucky asks, with the rollout of the new Tethys version of 4.0, how does it affect apps using the old versions? Are there any incompatibilities? What sort of upgrade pathway and or challenges are involved there?
Great. That's a great question. So we do have a migration guide on our website and on our documentation for how to migrate from 3 to 4. We tried to make it so that the apps would still function, so that to make migration easier. So in theory, your app should load, but you'll probably see some warnings, and it probably won't look great because we also upgraded Bootstrap at the same time. And so what I would recommend is going to our documentation and looking at that app migration guide, and it outlines what you need to do to migrate your apps from 3 to 4, kind of the main things. And of course, if you need more help, reach out on the discussions page. We'd be happy to help.
Yeah, I'll kind of make a little shameless plug just for the documentation that is behind Tethys platform. I know Nathan, because Tethys platform was his dissertation and his doctorate work product, it kind of was born out of a lot of documentation, right? He had to document a lot from the beginning, but they've those developing, us in the steering committee, everyone that's contributed, we've really tried to flesh out the documentation to make it easy for people to jump in that sense as well. So yeah, go look at the docs. We're on Read the Docs, and we have great documentation. I think our documentation page gets visited more than our official tethysplatform.org page, which I think is great. Right? It means people are using it, right? So.
Yeah, I took a survey of the docs, in prep for this, and there's definitely a lot of, it seems very, very thoroughly covers everything. So excellent. All right. Any last thoughts, comments before we wrap?
I don't think so.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, Nathan and Sean, thank you so much for taking the time to come on today to talk about Tethys. Anybody out there trying to do environmental, water, atmospheric research, anything with geo, definitely give Tethys a shot because it's a powerful tool that can do a lot for you. So that's all for today's event. The event has been recorded, and once we get that worked up, we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel, Open Teams' YouTube channel. So subscribe there to be notified when that video goes up. Should be within a couple of weeks at most. Check out openteams.com to learn more about Open Teams and our offerings, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Thanks, everyone.